Now, if you're in the market to buy a Polo 6R GTi 1.4 TSI DSG, you need to watch this video first, because there are many problems that exist with this car, and if you're serious about buying this car, you should either look at your competitors, get yourself a good warranty, or make sure you have a lot of cash in your bank account, because you'll probably end up fixing some form of an issue on this car, because there are just so many common problems that exist with a Polo 6R GTi. Now, if you look at the car for what it is without its problems, it's a great hatchback. It makes a decent amount of power. It's got a dual clutch transmission, dual charge as well, so turbocharged and supercharged. So the package itself is really set up for fun, which it is. If everything is working, it's a great car to drive. I've driven quite a few Polo 6R GTIs, and it's an enjoyable hatchback, hot hatch to drive. But there are many issues that exist with this car, and it would be foolish to go buy a Polo 6R GTI without knowing about the big array of problems that exist with this car. Now that that intro is out of the way, let's get into the common problems that exist with the Polo 6R GTI. Problem number 1, piston failure, piston breakage, engine failing, engine bombing out. That is really the biggest problem on this car, and how this would normally play out is that you would notice that your car is all of a sudden using more oil than what it's supposed to. Now, VW recommends with this car, it's okay to use 1 liter of oil for every 1,000 kilometers. So you might notice that all of a sudden your car is using 1.5 liters, it's using 2 liters, and you take it into the dealership and they'll start diagnosing the car. Now, the dealership will inspect the plugs and they will look at the coloration on the plugs, and that's already cues for them where they can see that there's going to be problems with this engine going forward. And sadly to say, there's just been many reported cases that exist with the pistons failing on the Polo GTI, and it's just a common problem that you need to be aware of if you want to buy a Polo GTI. Now, when the pistons fail, the dealership will do a compression test to check where the problem is on the engine. So they'll take a compression test tool, they'll put it into the cylinder, and they'll figure out, okay, where the problem actually is on which cylinder bank. And once they find there's a problem on a specific cylinder, they'll do further investigation. And there's one of two outcomes with this. Either the piston has failed, there's damage, breakage damage to the piston itself, and you can get away with just replacing the pistons themselves, or the piston is actually damaged and it has damaged the bore inside the block. Now, once that occurs, you actually need to replace the entire block, or what they call sub-assembly of the car. So that's new bearings, new crank, new pistons, new piston rings. It's almost a new engine. So it's not really a new engine, because all the loose components you can still transfer, but it's really a big expense. And if a dealership is going to do that for you, you're looking at 70,000 Rand to do the job, and you're looking at between 20 and 30 hours of labor to get your engine fixed up. So the piston failure on the Polo 6R is the biggest problem that you need to watch out for and be aware of. So you need to really watch out and keep your eye on the oil consumption of the car, because that would normally be the first sign that there's going to be a problem going forward with this engine. Now, there are improved pistons that have since been released after this issue has been reported and discovered multiple times. So it's advisable that you refit improved pistons to the car after replacing the pistons, if that is an issue that is going to exist with the car that you are interested in. Number 2 on our list today is problems with the charge pressure changeover valve. Now, the valve actually gets stuck and it just mechanically jams. There's not much that you can do to prevent this or predict that it's going to happen. What you can watch out for is lack of power. Now, this component is part of the boost system inside the engine, and yeah, there's not much really that you can do to prevent it from failing. Luckily, it is not catastrophic, and it's also not that labor intensive to repair. You're looking at 2 hours labor, and VW will be able to diagnose the car. They can plug the car in on the OBD system, and normally the error is a direct indication of what the actual problem is. So the diagnostic tool will actually show that there's a problem with the charge pressure changeover valve. Point number 3 on our list today is mechanical failure of the clutch on the water pump. Now the Polo GTi is quite an advanced engine and it uses a clutch on the water pump. Now this is located close to the supercharger, and normal symptoms that you can watch out for is a bearing type of noise or metal on metal type of noise, but it's normally a noise that you will hear that's coming from the engine, and you will also feel that there's a lack of power because the supercharger won't be able to boost. So that's something that you need to watch out for. The clutch and the water pump is actually one unit, so you actually need to replace the water pump at the same time because it's one unit, and you're looking at 4 hours labor to do the job. Point number 4 on our list today is turbo failure. Symptoms you can watch out for: lack of power, lack of boost, just general drivability gone down. You can also watch out for black smoke, and how this issue normally occurs is that the retaining nut on the compressor wheel actually breaks off, falls inside the turbo, and it actually self-destructs the turbo, and it just actually breaks the internals of the turbo, and then you need a new turbo. Now when it comes to replacement of the turbo, you actually have quite a few options. You can either go OEM or you can go non-OEM direct replacement, so it would be plug and play. So that's just something that you need to watch out for. Labor wise, you are looking at 6 hours labor to replace the turbo, so it is a bit of a big job. So that's something you need to watch out for. Turbo failure on the Polo 6 GTi is very common. Point number 5 on our list today is issues with the timing chain and the tensioner. Now these are two separate issues. Issue number 1, the timing chain stretches over time. It can skip a tooth, cause the timing on the car to go out, and then you can either damage your cylinder head, damage your valve, or worst case scenario, you can actually damage the pistons and the entire sub-assembly because the timing actually just goes out and it causes catastrophic damage. Problem number 2 that we need to address is the tensioner. Now the tensioner itself can just fail, and there's nothing really that you can do to predict or know that the tensioner is going to fail. But it's something that you need to watch out for with the Polo 6 GTi. If you're buying a high mileage Polo 6 GTi, as preventative maintenance, if you're not sure if the chain and the tensioner was replaced, just replace it. The timing chain and tensioner failing is not really something that you want to happen on your watch, because worst case scenario, you need to replace the entire engine. Point number 6 on our list today is wear of the camshaft adjuster gear. Now the camshaft adjuster gear actually just bolts onto the intake camshaft, and it just wears over time. So you can watch out for rattling noise, whining noise, any noise that sounds like it's coming from the camshaft area in the engine. It's likely an issue with the camshaft adjuster gear. Now unlike the Golf 6 GTi where the adjuster gear and the camshaft is one unit, if you have a problem to replace the adjuster gear on the Polo GTi, you can just replace the unit itself and you don't need to replace the camshaft as well. It is quite an intensive job, so you're looking at 6 hours of labor. So if you get a rattling noise that's coming from that part of the engine with cylinder headers, there's likely a problem with the adjuster gear. Now the fuel injectors, they actually fail in two ways. First way is they start leaking, and the second way is they just electronically fail, like they end of life, electronically done. The component doesn't work anymore. So it's quite sad, but it does happen with this car. So if you've parked the Golf 6 GTi and overnight you notice that there's a fuel smell or a fuel leak coming from the injector area, there's likely a problem with your fuel injectors and you need to have them replaced. Now of course you can take it to your local dealership and they can actually test the fuel injectors for you to make sure that it's operating correctly. But these electronic fuel injectors actually throw an error, so VW will be able to pick up if there's an electronic fault with the injector itself. So if it's not leaking, if there's an electronic fault, if there is an electronic fault with the injector, unfortunately you'll have to replace the injectors on your Polo GTi. Point number 8 on our list today is premature wear of the DSG clutch. Now the Polo of course is fitted with a 7-speed DSG gearbox, and it also utilizes a dry clutch. Now things that you can watch out for is a squeaky sound when you pull away. So if the car's standing still and you pull away, you can watch out for the squeaky sound coming from the transmission tunnel from the gearbox area. Or you can also watch for shuddering or notchy changes between first and second gear. So if you pull away, monitor how the gearbox behaves between first and second gear. If it's behaving erratically, if there's any form of a shudder, is likely a problem with the clutch. It's quite an intensive job to replace the clutch, and you're also looking at about 10,000 Rand when it comes to the cost of the job. So watch out for notchy changes when you're test driving a car. If you're test driving a Polo GTi that you want to buy, don't just get in on the highway and drive the car. Try to get into traffic. Try to do some stop start, where you actually can gauge if there's a problem with the car pulling away from standstill, because you don't want to buy a used Polo GTi and soon thereafter find yourself replacing a clutch. Point number 9 on our list today is failure of the mechatronic unit on the DSG gearbox. Now, there's two ways that this can fail. Either the oil pump inside the mechatronic unit can fail, or the unit just fails as a whole electronically. There isn't really much that you can do to prevent this from happening. There's a couple of symptoms you can watch out for. The biggest one is a flashing icon on the instrument cluster that there's a problem with the gearbox. You can also watch out for jerky changes, and while you drive the car, you can also watch out for the gears actually popping out. So you might be driving in a gear and it just pops out of gear. That's a big red flag that is likely a problem with the mechatronic unit. You can take the car into the workshop, take it to VW, let them diagnose the car for you, and find out if there's actually a problem with the mechatronic unit. Unfortunately, it's expensive. You're looking at between 10 and 15,000 Rand, depending on where you do the job, to replace the mechatronic unit, and it's actually very labor intensive as well. So that's something that you need to watch out for. If you're going to test drive the car, try to drive all 7 gears and try to experience the car in traffic, in highway driving, just so that you can figure out that there's no problem with the gears changing over on the mechatronic unit, because it's a very expensive unit to replace and very labor intensive to fix as well. My name is Kurt from Wheel Index, the place where South Africans go to buy used cars. If you are looking for a used Polo 6R GTi, be sure to check out our website. I'm sure you'll find a great deal for the Polo GTi for you on our website. Catch you back next time. Cheers.